Yeah, so this is the first time. I'm excited. Are you excited?
I'm very excited.
I'm very excited too. Let's give you some content first. Yeah. Should we give you?
Yeah, it's fine.
So I was going through a box that was given to us here at the bookstore by some book Jawas. I was having a day when I was tired of reading poets' bios on the back of books where they explain everything that the poetry that you're about to read is supposed to be. You know? I write decolonized verse to restructure the whole, Western civilization. Bro, let me hear it in the poesia, you know what I'm saying? Like, let's hear it in the words, right? So I was having one of those moments. I know that's how it is these days. You do your bio, and it's actually not a bio. It's kind of like what you want your poetry to be heard as. That's cool, I get it. But I'm an old ass man, so I was pining it that day for just a book of poems. Like, let me open this book and let me check the poesia, right? So out of this fucking box that I'm looking at falls a bunch of pages of poems. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? And I start reading the poems, and I'm amazed, and I feel connected, and I feel kind of like a chancla by an ancestor got thrown at me, right? Hit in the head. And there's a familiarity to this poet. I recognize like a real dissatisfaction with America. I recognize a restlessness. It was amazing, right? And I read this poems. And then when I got into the box, I found the pieces of the rest of the book, right? As well as there was a couple of copies there. One I gave to Lourdes, one I gave to Soledad, who's never read it.
It's in my room.
Okay.
Piles of things. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
A nice person.
But I started researching him, and nobody can tell us anything about him. So I hit up the academics that I know. I hit up Juan Felipe Herrera. I hit up Joseph Rios. I hit up Dr. Naomi Quinones. I hit up Dr. Loco Jose Cuellar. Nobody remembers him at all. Everyone's like, who? Which for me made it even more interesting, right? And then I opened the piece of a book. And basically, lo and behold, the introduction was written by Alderete. No big deal if you don't know who it is, but does anyone know who Alderete is?
Yes.
Who is he, Louis?
He is one of the voices of the Chicano movement.
Yes. He was the poet that was probably most credited with introducing the term Aztlán to the cultura. He was a badass poet from back in the day, but he wrote the introduction and basically says, Ricardo's imágenes are reminiscent of César Vallejo, the Peruvian poet, and su testimonio to the demythification of the world. Teall's anti-poetry is anti-art for art's sake, anti-power for the poderosos that legislate and administer pobreza throughout the world. Ricardo is a warrior, and alienation is the enemy that has to be defeated. So, then I read his bio at the end. Father Richard Teall is a member of the Congregation of the Holy Cross. After graduating from the University of Notre Dame in Indiana, he studied theology at the Holy Cross College of Catholic University in Washington, D.C. He continues his graduate work at the Terracinium in Rome. After ordination in 1950, he worked for 20 years outside this country, engaging in missionary work, as well as education and dialogues with workers, students, and teachers in the lands of Africa, India, Buddhist countries, and South America. Under a Danforth grant from Colgate and Harvard, he was allowed to study the social and economic impact of the world's greatest religions. Father Teall has done much of his work in Chile, where he was professor at the Catholic University in Santiago and St. George's College in the same city, where he has served in parishes and missions. and where he has worked for prison reform. Father Richard Teall is well versed in the theology of liberation and is in contact with those who are developing it. He himself has published several works in the area, all in Spanish, except for some poetry in English, which we have here. So what me and Lourdes are going to be doing, we're going to do a little round robin. I'm going to read in Pocho English, and Lourdes is going to read his poems in Spanish. Okay? So honestly, when I saw that bio, I mean, we have a long tradition in Latin America of these revolutionary priests, you know? I mean, we could think of Romero, right? We can think of Father Hidalgo, who was actually the priest who gave the Grito de la Revolución in Mexico, you know? We think of Ernesto Cardenal. So this guy right here is, I think, in those, kind of in that vein, in a big way. And this is his poetry. My residence in this leaking toyland of porno detective tales, transistors, the roar of shifting diesel rigs, telephones, threadbare rugs, and all the clamor of poor faces filling up the windows keeps me out of touch with stars. I wander illegal, sin documentos, migrant among the rose trees, sitting in my thought of patches, in pieces, shredded in other offices with chewing gum. I weep, disqualified by cablegrams, night watchmen with warm memories, bodies in a sack, funeral homes, and so many bodies tied up and in a sack. Poor fish. These scales are scattered in the cold of death along the Erie beaches, outside the pharmacy on Sunday in foreign jackets and sunsets. I flounder along the railroad tracks, avoiding newscasts at 7, startled by the breezes rising and the loneliness of the local cat house.
¿Lo has visto alguna vez viajando descamisado en un vuelo musical de carrusel de Estepín? ¿Lo has visto? Ha hecho la fuga transfigurado por sendedores que estallan en flores azuladas, embarca por latitudes de las lluvias más salvajes. Se dirige hacia los archipiélagos brutales de las flores rojas. Ya basta con las fechorías de su despacho. El crimen fue un sillón. ¿Quién lo olvida? ¿Quién podrá perdonar las delincuencias y un teléfono estridente? ¿Hasta cuándo iba a jugar el payaso de gabinetes? Lo estrujaba el performance de los banqueros. Lo mataba el performance de sus clientes con su peculiar sistema. Iba macabro en la ausencia de los cerezos. Iba notorio, pigmeo, empobrecido, sin los pájaros en el follaje verde de sus duraznos. Desgraciada araña se arrastraba entre la tristeza de cafeterías, envuelto en las periferias de su lápiz y tolerando hachazos de las cuentas. Más este día va caudillo por los suburbios, montado en un caballo crin dorado, sin estribos, descamisado va, y algo loco, el formidable protector de los manzanos.
One waits without sneezing to excess or growing blisters. One waits without sneezing to excess or growing blisters. In the parentheses of marijuana truck stops and necklaces ripped off by streaking panthers in the circle of official dinners, one can sniff the sky, inhaling the interrupted smells of broken fountains in this sorry park of bodies, worms, and racing insects. Let the sheriff issue warrants. Let the parson wheeze and protest out across communion tables. One waits, discarded by summer and all the sanity of cockleburs and ragweed. One shrivels, rattles with his teeth in the ferocious inundation of this city. struggling with his face caved in upon the monstrous surface of a shaving mirror. One crumbles with the daily combs of falling hair. Here I spread my bones, like squeaking branches over the floozies of the bar on Oak Street. I water my roots, I stretch, cough up a blasphemy, and straddle my winter on the cracked up leather of a swinging stool.
I feel the loneliness to the bones. Mi asunto, aquello. Poco ha cambiado, torear a los momentos. Salgo pálido, no lo niego, débil, como recién operado. Y de nuevo, sin remota gana, confronto la asamblea. Paso mis días sin tranquilo alojamiento entre locauces, bufones, histéricos, leopardos, fauces. Paso mi tiempo salpicado, cables, almuerzo, cáscaras de cita, entrevistas, la prensa, los acostumbrados fardos. Sigue temblando la bandera de mi camisa. ¿Sabes tú que yo a veces sospecho todo? A veces dudo dentro de mis huesos, árbol muerto, y dentro de un crepúsculo global. Esencia, comedia, según mi modo, y es fatal, creando figuras de lodo.
Disconsolate prince, black night, slouch, brimming with dude hats, jive in your pistol and jacket, save your living skin. Your luck teeters at the brink, manly trickle, tough tear, great loom of lake-like eyes, ephemeral shadow, move it, run, freak, fugitive, snarl, non sequitur, squire, shuffle, pang, hotel artifact, dusty boy, Olympic on the leap, roughing it through, loins, rove our streets, look in our windows, we have your baby, weep.
Cuando los 7 monstruos se sentaban en mi puerta, dormían en mi cama, derrocaba en mi silla más modesta. Tú me pedías una balada arcoíris y me hablaba como un borracho de amantes, cerveza, zapatos, gravedades de tu cálida profesión, ingeniería. Me considero perseguido por inofensivo paraguas, hostigado por kioscos de la tarde. Las conversaciones de los inocentes, ninfas de la calle, me parecen turbas de mortiferias banderas. Los atardeceres asumen miradas aterroradas, llenas de golpe de mensaje y puñales. A toda hora llegan muertes puntuales. El silencio de mi casa descarga, una llovizna de desolación, un chisme, un rumor. Cosecha fácilmente las gavillas tan contadas de mi hombría. Cuando los 7 monstruos sacan la tripa y la espina de mi canto y descuartizan la paz y armonía de mi pipa, no me pidas más baladas, te lo suplico.
Circles of faces, innocent as snowfall. Circles of city people, lovely in the sun, wade through the bayous of indecent streets, exploding with grief in the emergency room of Riverside. I saw my uncle breaking down in his crash of shoes. I saw my uncle clothed with fragments of hats and shreds of tragic sweaters. I saw my uncle in his sepulchral gown of rehabilitation in the mental ward of Carmel. I found my uncle in the stench of falling intestines at the feet of fruit stands in the market, at the feet of headlines in the daily news, falling through his extinguished pipes, falling through the smoke of his festivities.
Ya no hay nada, no hay más que esa cruz inmensa, lejana, tan callada, de un cuervo en funumbre altura, nada más te digo que una nube, paloma gigantesca, en un campo azul con un sol de lento paso que mante ritmo en las avenidas de las copas, de los cedros, nada, te juro, nada, nada pasa, ni pasará en estos lados, sino el ramo invernal de un pino verde de siempre, con lluvias de marzo, hechizado por ráfagas nocturnas. Puedes andar seguro, puedes vivir en paz, no pasa nada, solo la luna tenue mordida, pues no hay más.
Serpent cosmos sinks in fangs of rubble. Corridores of peeling paint, steaming showers rusty with postmen, miners, secret agents, the felonies of clockwork, fields deprived of pollen, stables of the rich and rifles and poker chips, the pockets of statesmen. I spend the night observing the sleep of darkness and wheelbarrow emptiness and the holliness of chicken coops. My memory of seaweed and the shine of shells will stretch my eyes like gulls across dismantled ports.
En esta latitud salvaje de furia, de pena, de frontera, de masacre genital y desdicha pionera, donde el amor me resulta manantial, me arrastro entitulando noches, ahorcándome de tremendas amarguras, de los faroles, de cines, de bares, de callejuelas con estudiantes asombrados, no sé, tristes, sonrientes, algo estelares, me paro, me doblo. Un paroxismo, doy una vuelta por higiénicas esquinas, soy el vómito de un día desfigurado, el eructado vulgar de mis desventuras, lunítico por mi vida. Ay. Voy con la tropa omnívoro de vida, indeleble cicatriz rasgado, sonámbulo de terribles temores. Me ausento porque la vida está mía. Es bestial, insecto en la sopa.
This one's got some references to Columbus, not the colonizer, but the occupied territory. How will you see it? Your ancestors melting in the dusk with a quarter moon and the small change of misfortune overflowing in the twilight of laundromats and restaurants, with an Ohio winter of fatigue. The sky, immense with airships raging into port, disgorging satchels, shipwrecked hats, along with glands and views on melancholy. Take your black umbrella, and with gloves go now consulting among the silences of pizza parlors almost empty, cinemas, the vicarage. Your city gone delirious with buses, hard rock, pianos in the bar, submerges in the marshland of TV antennas. River Olatangi disintegrates with refuse below your bridges, heavy with the scandals of trucks and the fornications of all commerce, tourists, motel clerks, and the sirens. Columbus is at your feet, colossal and capital. Eat well then, pick your teeth.
Ciudad Olimpo de tu salud. Un bárbaro escombro, espectro, harapiento, te doy la mano. Desgraciada, tú cancelas mi risa, te burlas de mi llanto. Desde la madrugada que se enferma con mi calle 11, siento la inundancia de tu crisis. Caigo de bruces bajo estrellas matutinas, asaltado por tempestuosas travesuras de la lucha de bocinas. Es este conflicto titán y criminal, de carros, de micros, de motos, de choferes apasionados. Me muerden y me mutilan, tu ruido y tus aires contaminados, tu brillo siembra ruinas, corro veloz, mas siempre exterminado. Es la borrachera imperial, es la gangrena de envidias colosales, capitalistas. Oh ciudad atroz, mi dama grotesca, boomtown, mi bomba, me escupes con fuego. Diaria e incansablemente, con tus truenos viles, absolutos, tú me conviertes en calofrío, bruja metrópolis, con tu mesianismo ensuciado, aplagas mi mente, mi plato, mi cama, mi abuelo, mi pluma, mi vino, hasta ocupas mi dama Juana.
Last one. Every poet's written a Melancholy Sunday poem. This priest wrote one too. Instead of going to church, he wrote a poem on a Sunday. Sundays in stereo go by with captivities of goldfish in eerie parlors, and motionless hangers in the closets stir with winds that circulate in stereo above the eaves. With the mishap of crumpled shoes under chairs below the calamities of rooftops, all the degrees of growing old and going yellow with the terrible sparrows of Sunday. Sunday clocks, the grief of colors, of comic papers and diaspora across the floor. We were assaulted by the memory of wedding parties, moving brides, bouquets, the borrowed and the blue of yesterday. Now, Sunday brandy in stereo. Sunday befalls me with football freaks and frying pans. Through catnaps, the hours creep. Sunday rolls like a river of nada, a strange storm in the hand. That was the poetry of a priest we know nothing about, Ricardo Teall. Yeah, man, it's a beautiful thing. I always bring this up, but one of my favorite parts in The Savage Detectives is when, at the end of the book, right, they're supposedly creating this anthology that's like the definitive anthology on Mexican literature, right? All the poets are in there. And it comes out and none of the Infrarealists are in it. You know, none of the Bolanos crew, none of those cats are in there, right? But there's just so many poets out there that if they disappear through the cracks or if they don't, they're still there for us, you know? So I highly encourage you to find those motherfuckers wherever they're hiding and rediscover them. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.